Texas heads into its second rainy season of the year. A KXAN investigation found regional vacancies at the National Weather Service's Austin and San Antonio office are only increasing 2 months after deadly flooding killed at least 135 people. This week on Inside the Investigation, investigative reporter Matt Grant explains why a member of Congress and a former federal official believes the delay could be putting lives at risk. Welcome to Inside the Investigation. I'm your host, investigative reporter Kelly Wiley, and today I'm joined by my desk mate and investigative reporter Matt Grant. Matt, thank you for joining the show.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Kelly.
So Matt, you've been investigating the response and aftermath of the July 4th flooding since the beginning, and your reporting really has been incredible. But this most recent report that you've put out about the National Weather Service and its staffing, tell us what you found.
So we started looking into staffing levels immediately following the devastating floods on July 4th. What we found at the time the next day is that the National Weather Service office in the Austin, San Antonio area had 6 vacancies out of 27 positions. Today, there are 7. So not only did they not fill the 6 positions that were vacant back in July, more than 2 months later, there's now another position that's left open. This one was an electronic systems analyst. And according to that person's LinkedIn, we did reach out. That person had more than 18 years of experience in radar IT systems. And they write that they oversee the management, maintenance, and technical support for critical weather surveillance systems. So really an important position that is now another layer of jobs that are left open at a critical time as Texas heads into the second rainy season of the year and more than 2 months removed from this devastating flood that killed more than 130 people, including, as you know, many young children.
And this came up then, as you mentioned. This was something that we were asking the governor about and other officials back then. But I want to know more about all of the positions that are vacant. Break down what all those positions are.
Yeah, so the National Weather Service and NOAA has not confirmed the positions that are vacant right now. And on its website, it just lists vacant next to the positions. So it doesn't say like a title. It just says like a subhead like management. And then under that, it'll say like vacant. But we did some digging and using Internet Archive searches, we were able to piece together the positions that are vacant right now. And that's the warning coordination meteorologist, which experts, including the former administrator for NOAA, has said that this is a very key role responsible for outreach on the ground with local emergency officials. We have a lead meteorologist, a science and operations officer, an electronic systems analyst who I just mentioned, an observing program leader, and an electronic technician. Now, some of these positions, like the warning coordination meteorologist, that's a one-of-one position. So that's the only person who's got that role in the office. Some of them, like the electronic technician, that's one of 3. The meteorologist, that's one of 7. The lead meteorologist, that's one of 6. So in those roles, it's not just reliant on one person, but in totality, we have about 26% of the staff that it once had now vacant.
And I think it really kind of hits to the point when you talk about the job that their whole position would be to coordinate with people on the ground in those areas. They're kind of responsible for the communication. That role would be vacant is interesting. So one of the positions you mentioned, the warning coordination meteorologist, it's been vacant since the end of April. What do we know about that position?
So the person who held that position before, his name is Paul Ura. He left on April 30th, so the end of April. He took an early retirement as part of the Trump administration's federal budget cuts through the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. So he left. Congressman Lloyd Doggett, around that same time, had reached out to the Weather Service, to NOAA, asking about staffing shortages across the country. He said he was told that there are 126 permanent, quote, mission critical positions across the country that were left open. And so he wanted more information about that. And he's been asking for records and for questions really about the vacancy rate since around that time. I think his first letter he sent out was in May, and his most recent letter was this past Monday. So for months, he's been trying to get to the bottom of this.
And I want to come back to Doggett, but first, what does NOAA, which oversees the National Weather Service, have to say about this?
Well, previously, the White House has pushed back. So immediately after the flooding, the White House had a press conference and they said, look, the National Weather Service did its job, that these warnings went out in a timely fashion, and that the offices were well-staffed and including in some cases overstaffed is what they said. We were told, well, Congressman Doggett was told in a letter this week by the Commerce Department, which is like the umbrella organization for NOAA and the Weather Service, that staffing at these local regional offices were surged heading into the flooding, that they had extra people on hand overnight. So they kind of pushed back on the idea that there was not enough people on hand to handle the crisis. But in terms of the warning coordination meteorologist position, we asked on September 2nd why that position 2 months later hadn't been filled. 8 days later, on September 10th, that position was listed on usajobs.gov. So the position is now currently being advertised. And basically a White House official, administration official, told us the same thing that the National Weather Service also said, which I'm going to read their statement, is, quote, the National Weather Service is carefully evaluating the need for additional personnel and posting jobs to fill positions deemed necessary for operational continuity. These jobs are being offered as needed to ensure both the safety of Americans and the responsible use of taxpayer dollars.
As needed. So what they're trying to communicate, it seems from this statement, is that as the need arises, a job may come back on the job board.
Correct. When we don't know where these positions exactly are going to be filled, they have listed some of them. Experts we spoke with, that former NOAA administrator, for example, he thinks that positions will be prioritized. So the Southeast for hurricane season, the Northwest for wildfires. But we know at least at the Austin San Antonio office, they are now advertising that position for the warning coordination meteorologist, which really, Kelly, is such a key role because this is the person who is ensuring that the people on the ground, the emergency officials, that they get these warning messages, that they act on them. And so that's a really important position that's been vacant since April, but really came into focus after the July 4th flooding, when on that night, as we know, that position, among others, was empty.
So let's go back to Congressman Doggett. He's been one of the most forceful critics on the federal level of budget cuts to the National Weather Service. We know you talked to him. What did he have to say?
Yeah, so since May, he sent more than a half dozen letters. It started with wanting to find out more information about the vacancies and records related to it. That was after the warning coordination meteorologist had took that early retirement at the end of April. After the flooding, that kind of ramped up, so he started sending more letters. He's requested staffing shift logs. He wants radar records, chat communication logs, basically anything. He wants to know, who did the National Weather Service actually communicate with on the ground, if anyone? And he wants all of the records from right before the flooding to right after the flooding, that couple-day window period. He says he's being stonewalled. He says he's not received those records. He asked for them in July, and today he still has not received them. He did get a response back on Monday. The Commerce Department wrote him back. They said, in addition to staffing being surged, that they were able to successfully provide decision support services to local partners, including those in the emergency management community during the disaster. Congressman Doggett, though, pushed back on that because if you'll remember, in Kerrville at the end of July, they had this special legislative hearing, and they spoke with local officials on the ground, and they were caught off guard by this storm. The Kerr County Emergency Management Coordinator, W.B. Thomas, told lawmakers he was sick and asleep at the time. Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly said he was out of town. He was at a house on Lake Travis. Sheriff Larry Latha said he didn't wake up until people were already trapped on their roofs and that it was too late. Kerrville Mayor Joe Herring said he was not aware of a July 3rd situational awareness call for severe weather that was held by the Texas Division of Emergency Management and the National Weather Service the day before the flooding. So Congressman Doggett, in his response letter sent this past Monday, he pushed back on the Commerce Department, and he said, when I just want to read this quote that he said here, outreach can hardly be called successful if the intended recipient, like the Kerr County Emergency Manager, was not reached. I have reason to question this claim unless it is backed by National Weather Service chat and call logs that show successful attempts at contacting emergency managers and other local leaders, including camp directors. So there's still a battle right now to get those records for accountability and for answers more than 2 months after the devastating floods.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Doggett here is saying your statement is not enough in this case. I want proof of how things happened. Still, and it really begs the question, because you're talking about that critical role that would be the communicator from the National Weather Service to emergency management officials. I mean, this was obviously a historic weather event for the Hill Country and for Kerr County, an area that gets flooding all of the time anyway, but we've heard many of them say that this was unlike what they've seen in a very, very long time. But it does beg the question, do we have any examples of what the communication would have looked like had this person been in place? Instances from the past. And I know you are going to continue to follow up on this and continue your reporting. Matt, thank you so much. You can read Congressman Doggett's letters dating back to May, along with the response he received this week in Matt's story online now at KXAN.com. As always, we're here every Friday on Inside the Investigation. I'm your host, Kelly Wiley. We'll see you next time.